Thank you, President. I speak today as a Yanyuwa woman. We are known as Liantawiriara, which means our spiritual origin comes from the sea country, and we talk from the heart. I speak also today as a proud First Nations member of this parliament on behalf of and alongside my colleagues, Senator Jana Stewart, Senator Dorinda Cox, Special Envoy Marion Scrimger, the member for Robertson, Dr Gordon Reid, the member for Leichhardt, Matt Smith. And I speak today as a visitor to Ngunnawal country, welcomed beautifully this week by Aunty Violet Sheridan. I speak to the Senate about respect. This week, the first week of the 48th Parliament, we've seen deliberate acts of disrespect in the Senate from One Nation senators. We've seen those senators come into the chamber for the Acknowledgement of Country, a long-standing part of the Senate order of business, purely to make an incredibly childish stunt, and a very hurtful one, of turning their backs on that proceeding. These senators aren't required to be in the Senate for the Acknowledgement of Country. In fact, they haven't been in the past. But they do now, whether it is for attention or for clickbaits, whether it is to cause offence, whether it is to stoke division. These senators have made a deliberate decision to disrespect First Nations Australians. You'd think that have learned lessons from the election, President. You'd think that have heard the clear message from the Australian people in May. The politics of culture wars were rejected. The politics of disrespect and nastiness were rejected. The politics of punching down on First Nations people were rejected. And we've just had 3 years of people in this place trying to do the opposite of that. Attacking welcomes to country, attacking acknowledgements of country, and trash-talking First Nations communities and representatives, undermining efforts to show respect for First Nations Australians. And the Australian people made their rejection of that division and cynicism very, very clear. Our government is committed to a different way of operating, and we listen to people and we treat them with respect, even when we do not agree with them. We won't be swayed by the gales of divisive culture wars, wherever it comes from. Our government knows that the key to our success regarding First Nations people and on all issues is an approach of respect, listening and approaching with a mind open to the truths of the past. And our government doesn't attack First Nations Australians but recognises them. We see them, we hear them. Our government will continue to listen to the people who have been here for countless generations, from Fitzroy to Fitzroy Crossing. The longest continuing culture on earth. Our government engages with First Nations peoples, seeks the benefit of their experiences to build the success of this country as a whole. Our government acknowledges them and their dignity. And that's what an acknowledgement of country is about, President. As the Prime Minister put it on Monday, it is a respectful way of us beginning our deliberations here in Canberra, which of course means meeting place. And it is a reminder as well, while we all belong here together, that we are stronger together and we belong. What a welcome to country does is hold out like a hand, warmly and graciously extended, an opportunity for us to embrace and to show a profound love of home and country. I urge those senators, in particular the new senators, take a moment of how important it is and how precious it is to stand here as a senator in this Senate representing your state and indeed representing all Australians, including First Nations people. Respect and acknowledgement goes both ways. I urge all senators to remember who you work beside, who you walk with, and even when we disagree, we have a chamber here where we can discuss in a manner that is far more respectful than we've seen in these previous days.
Senator Hanson.
Thank you very much. Well,
Senator, you need to seek leave.
I seek leave to make a short statement.
Is leave granted? Leave is granted for 5 minutes, Senator Hanson.
Thank you very much. Senator Malarndirri and the other members of the caucus, First Nations caucus, as you call yourselves, I do understand and respect, and you're asking for that respect, and, as Australians. All we do, or One Nation does, and the rest of Australian people, is we're wanting the same respect back. The respect back that we are still part of this nation, that we are people that have born here, people that have migrated here, that we also want acknowledgement and respect to the nation. To constantly be told this is not your land, Aboriginal land always was, always will be. You are disenfranchising me and many other Australians. The Welcome to Country was not culture or tradition. It was actually introduced into Australia by Ernie Dingo in the 70s in relation to the New Zealand having their haka. Welcome to Country has not been a tradition of this parliament and has only just been introduced in the last few years. This has not been a stunt that I pulled just this week. I have turned my back on it for the past 3 years. Yeah. I am acknowledging the Australian people who voted against the voice. They don't want this division that's happening in our country. They are fed up with Welcome to Country. They want to see an end to it. To arrive on a plane in every state across this nation or, to get a Welcome to Country, people don't want that. They don't want this division. We have seen land handed back, and we've seen Australians stopped from going to certain places in this country because they're not welcomed there. This is their land. They can't go to Mount Warning, the Grampian Mountains. They can't go to certain parts. They can't do the things that every Australian should be entitled to. We are treated totally different in many areas. I understand the demise of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. I've visited their communities. I've spoken to them. You haven't got the support of Welcome to Country from every Aboriginal. A lot of them out there have contacted me and said, we are over it as well. We don't want this division in our nation. So it's the stance that I've taken to speak up on behalf of those Australian people that don't want this division. I don't want to have to do this. Order. But the whole fact is that I am actually speaking up on behalf because people don't know how else to protest over this. It's dividing us as a nation, as a people. Everything that I've said right from the very beginning I ever came into Parliament in 1996, my first statement was equality for all Australians. Yeah. But we're being treated totally different. It doesn't matter whether it's education, whether it's jobs, whether it's welfare, whether it's whatever it is. There is no definition to Aboriginality, and a lot of people claiming to be Aboriginal of this nation, they're not, because they can say it. That needs to change. As I said before, I'll say it again. When you recognise and respect us and say that we accept you as our equals in this nation, that we are all Australians together, I never hear it. And where is the protest that I hear of when the Aboriginal flag, not the Aboriginal flag, when the Australian flag is burnt in protest? Why should that be allowed?
Order.
That is not right. I've seen protests from Aboriginal people. I've seen the racism that's been thrown at me because I dare raise issues and I call for equality, so I'm supposed to be the racist of in this nation because I question things. That's not racism. Racism means that you believe your race to be superior to another. I have never, ever indicated that at all. I question, and all I have ever questioned is equality for all Australians. Yeah. And I will stand by that. And I've been the one who's actually gone up to these communities, come back to see the Minister for the Aboriginal Affairs, and I've advocated for jobs at Uluru, Ayers Rock, for those people there. I've advocated for housing up at North Queensland, Bamaka. I've advocated for a lot of issues to do with Aboriginal people and the corruption that's going on in these communities, land councils, everything like that. I've advocated for these people. A lot of Aboriginals come to me.
Thank you, Senator Hanson. The time for Your contribution.
Quick favour before we begin. If you were the kind of person who loves Australia and wants to stay up to date on what is genuinely happening inside our country's politics, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell icon right now. It helps us keep this channel going, and over 90% of viewers have not subscribed yet. It would mean the world to us if you did. Thank you. Now, back to the show. For 9 minutes, the Australian Senate stopped being a place of law and became a fault line. One Nation senators turned their backs during the Acknowledgement of Country, and in an instant, the quietest ritual in our democracy turned into the loudest fight in the building. If you think this was about a ceremony, you are missing the whole story. This was never about a few words spoken at the start of the day. It was about who gets to set the terms of this country, whose history gets told, and whose dignity gets treated as non-negotiable. Senator Malarndirri McCarthy did not mince words. As a Yanyuwa woman standing on Ngunnawal country, she called the protest exactly what it was: childish, hurtful, and political. Not a debate about tradition, but a deliberate act of disrespect designed to stoke division and grab headlines. And here's the kicker. She pointed straight at the May 2024 election and reminded the chamber that Australians had already rejected the politics of punching down. The message was simple. Respect and acknowledgement goes both ways, and a senator who refuses to acknowledge the very ground they stand on is not taking a principled stand. They are picking a fight.
But do not tune out, because the other side of this argument is where it gets genuinely fascinating. And do not forget to like and subscribe while we're at it. Pauline Hanson stood up and claimed she has refused to take part in the ceremony for 3 years. Not a stunt, she says, but a consistent position. Her argument is that this is not some ancient tradition at all, but a modern import. She points to Ernie Dingo and Maori influence back in the 1970s, and that turning it into a mandatory ritual in Parliament and airports and every event under the sun is not reconciliation, it is coercion. She says ordinary Australians feel disenfranchised, that being told this is not your land is a strange way to build a united nation, and that plenty of Aboriginal people are privately telling her they are over it too. Now, whether you agree with Hansen or not, this is the part the mainstream coverage tends to skip. Beneath the shouting sits a real unresolved question that Australia has never properly answered. Is acknowledging First Nations sovereignty a foundation we build on, or a threat to a single national story we are afraid to let go of? One side calls the ceremony a symbol of shared belonging, the other calls it hollow performance with no structural change behind it. And both are, in their own way, right, which is exactly why this argument never seems to end. Here's what actually happened while all this was unfolding. Labor and Greens senators walked out of the chamber during Hansen's speech, mirroring the very protest they had just condemned. Both sides turned their backs, both sides claimed the moral high ground, and somewhere in the middle, the rest of us are left watching a democracy that can't even agree on how to say hello. So ask yourself this: is respect something you can demand or something you can only earn? And if the answer matters to you, then the way you vote is where this fight gets settled, not in a Senate chamber, but at the ballot box. Thank you so much for watching.